Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Gav, where I talk about personal finance and investing. Just a full disclosure before we proceed, I'm not a professional. I create these videos for recreational and educational purposes only. If you are in need of professional advice, I suggest that you go seek a professional. And also, my goal is to help you build your wealth for yourself, for your family, and your future. And most importantly, I just want to reiterate that investing is fun and you'll thank yourself later on. So in today's video, actually from my past video, I talked about the Vanguard funds, the best Vanguard funds for year 2021. In today's video, we're gonna talk about just that. So we're gonna talk about the funds, the expense ratio, the minimum investment, the fund size, the performance and risk potential of the funds that we're going to talk about. So funds, that's the fund itself, and expense ratio, Wikipedia term says it is the total percentage of fund assets used for administrative, management, advertising, and all other expenses. This is the amount of money you pay to Vanguard for managing your funds, for having your money invested. So minimum investment is just that, the minimum amount of money you need to invest. And fund size, it is how large the funds are in terms of dollars. And performance, we're going to talk about the 1-year target, annual return, the 3-year, the 5-year, and the 10-year, and the risk potential. So the risk potential goes from 1 being safe and 5 being the higher risk. So let's start with the first fund, and this is the Vanguard Total Stock Market Index Fund Admiral Shares, also known as VTSAX. The expense ratio is 0.04%, and you need a minimum investment of $3,000, and the fund size is $1 trillion. So performance, here are the important parts. So for 1 year, it's 19.14%. 3-year is 13.21%, and for the 5-year and the 10-year are 13.95% and 14.04% respectively. Risk potential is 4, so this is up there to number 5, so it's high risk. And personally, I'm invested in VTSAX because my target for retirement is, in 10 years. So I want to take out my money starting from 2017. That's when I started my VTSAX investment journey. And the second fund that we're talking about is the Vanguard 500 Index Fund Admiral Shares, also known as VFIAX. Expense ratio 0.04, same as VTSAX. Minimum investment, same, $3,000. The fund size, however, is $620.2 billion, and the performance are the following, and this goes from 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year. So we're going to start with the 1 year. It's 17.41%, and for the 3 year is 13.13%, and the 5 year is 13.95%, and lastly the 10 year is 14.15%. And the risk potential is the same as VTSAX, so it's 4 risk potential. The third Vanguard fund that you would want to consider for long-term investment is the Vanguard Star Fund Investor Shares, and also known as VGSTX. That's a bit, excuse me. It has an expense ratio of 0.31%, so it's a little high. That's actually high. I don't go over 0.05% or even 0.10%. So having a 0.31% is a little steep for my taste. It has a minimum requirement of $1,000 that you need to invest, and fund size is $25.9 billion. So for performance, so 1 year term is 19.66%, the 3 year term is 11.07%, and the 5 year term is 10.97%, and lastly the 10 year is 9.94%. Risk potential, this is an average, which is in the middle, so it's 3 risk potential, which is safer than the first 2 that I talked about, but it has a high expense ratio, so you're just gonna be cognizant of how much you're paying. And the fourth one is the Vanguard Total International Stock Index Fund Admiral Shares. That's a handful. But if you want international exposure, this is it. It has an expense ratio of 0.11, so 0.11%, and it requires $3,000. Fund size is $407.1 billion, and performance are 9.63% for 1 year, 3.72% for 3 year, 7.41 for 5 year, and 5.37% for 10 year. And this has a risk potential of 5. So this is the high risk investment. And it also has a 0.11% expense ratio. So you just got to consider that. And the next one is the Vanguard Growth Index Fund Admiral Shares, also known as VIGAX. It has an expense ratio of 0.05%. Minimum investment required is $3,000 and has a fund size of $139.7 billion. And performance ratio are the following: 36.69% for 1 year. That's pretty good. The 3 year is the 21.58%, and 5 year is 18.75%, and the 10 year target is 16.82% with a risk potential of 4. So personally, I'm looking into this VIGAX for year 2021 for my Roth. I'm going to do more research. In addition to the VTSAX funds that I already have, the return rate for that 1 year is pretty good, and actually that 16.82 is actually good for the 10-year term in comparison to the VTSAX, which I already have. So I'm looking into VIGAX personally. So, and it also has a risk potential of 4, so that's a good. And the next one is the Vanguard Mid Cap Index Fund Admiral Shares, also known as VIMAX. So if you want mid-cap exposure, this is one of the best Vanguard funds out there, and has an expense ratio of 0.05%, a minimum investment requirement of $3,000, and fund size is $128.3 billion, and performance are the following: 16.31% for 1 year, 10.89% for 3 year. The 5 year is 11.76%, and the 10-year mark is 12.69, a risk potential of 5. So that's a little risky. Looking at the performance, it's up there with VTSAX, but it has an expense ratio of 0.05 as opposed to 0.04 for VTSAX. I'm actually looking into this one as well, but that risk potential is kind of scary in comparison to VIGAX and VTSAX. So I'm personally looking into VIMAX as well to get exposure to that mid-cap index fund sector. And the next one is VNQ. This is real estate index fund if you want exposure, and they also pay dividends. So it has an expense ratio. That's the ticker symbol VNQ, by the way, for Vanguard Real Estate Index Fund ETF. This is an ETF, as I mentioned, and it has expense ratio of 0.12%. It has no minimum investment, which is good. You can start with $100 and you can have VNQ ETF in your Vanguard account. And fund size of $58.6 billion, and performance for 1 year is negative 6.54. For 3 year is 3.88%, and the 5 year is 5.43%, and the 10 year is 8.85%, and risk potential of 4. I personally have this in my Vanguard as well, just because it pays dividends, and that expense ratio it's a little steep, but I want exposure to the real estate market, so that I bought that. It has no minimum requirement, which is good. So I bought, maybe I have about 5 shares of it. It's not much. I just want that real estate exposure. And the last one, the Vanguard funds for long-term hold, is the Vanguard High Dividend Yield ETF, also known as VYM. I personally have this as well. I have a few shares, and the expense ratio is 0.02%, 0.06%. No minimum requirement, which is good. Fund size is $38.6 billion, and performance is 0.76% for the first year. The third year is 5.03%. The 5-year is 9.03%, and the 10-year mark is 11.80%. And this has the risk potential of 5, and I don't know if I mentioned, VNQ also has a risk potential of 4. So my best recommendation would be, again, make your own best financial decision for yourself, for your family, and your future. Again, I'm not a professional. These are just my perspectives and input and my take on the best investment that I would make for myself. So best recommendation for you and for myself, and for those who are looking into investing into Vanguard funds for long-term hold, and we're talking about 5 to 10 years here. Don't day trade this thing. If you want to, there's gonna be a lot of risk. So best recommendation, this is for myself, and take this with a grain of salt, is low expense ratio and high performance for 5+ years. And bonus, if you want to add a high dividend ETF there as well, index fund, go for it. Then those are the best combination and best recommendation moving forward for new investors. And the prohibiting factor here is the minimum investment. Majority of the funds that I talk about, they have a minimum investment of $3,000. So what I would want to do for myself is, racked up that $3,000 or even $6,000 and put that into Roth IRA, because once you retire, you don't have to pay the taxes. So that's just my personal take on it. Investing is extremely risky, so make your own financial decisions. And I hope that you like the funds that I talk about. If you have any questions, comments, write them down below. I'm going to post this cheat sheet again in the description so you guys can have a look and have an overview, so you can just pull it up and do your own research if you want to do so. So again, if you have any questions, comment down below. If you have not subscribed yet, please subscribe and like the video. And to all my old subscribers, thank you for watching, and have a good day and happy holidays. I'll see you on the next video. Bye.